Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and America is gone. Not weakened, not defeated, gone. The world's largest economy, 26% of global GDP, wiped out overnight. The dollar, used in 89% of all global transactions, suddenly worthless. The military that has kept world peace since 1945, silent. What happens next? The answer will shock you because the world is far more dependent on America than most people realize.
Before we get into the scenario, you need to understand just how much the entire modern world is built around the United States. Let's start with the numbers, real verified numbers. US GDP in 2024, $28.8 trillion, 26.2% of all global economic output, World Bank. US dollar used in 89% of all global foreign exchange transactions, Federal Reserve 2025. US dollar makes up 58% of all central bank reserves worldwide, IMF COFR 2025. 50% of world GDP is produced in countries whose currency is anchored to the US dollar, Federal Reserve. US has 5,177 nuclear warheads, 3,700 in active stockpile, FAS, January 2025. US military spends $850 billion per year on defense, more than the next 10 countries combined. US military has bases in over 80 countries worldwide. Think about that for a second. Half the world's economies are literally pegged to the US dollar. Every time you buy oil anywhere in the world, that transaction happens in US dollars. Every time a company in Brazil buys electronics from South Korea, those are priced in US dollars. This is what economists call the petrodollar system, and it has run the world economy since 1944 under the Bretton Woods Agreement. The United States isn't just a country, it is the architecture of the modern world. So now, let's destroy it and watch everything else collapse. Our hypothetical is this: Iran launches a coordinated, all-out strike, nuclear, cyber, and conventional, targeting the United States simultaneously. Now, here's the first important fact. This is physically impossible with Iran's current capabilities. Iran has 0 nuclear weapons today. The Arms Control Association confirmed in their 2024 threat assessment that Iran has not developed a nuclear warhead. Iran's longest-range missiles can reach parts of Europe, not the continental United States. But this is a what-if channel, so we go to the extreme hypothetical. What if, somehow, America ceased to exist as a functioning nation overnight? What if every American city went dark, the government collapsed, the military disappeared, the dollar vanished, all in 24 hours? What would the world look like starting the very next morning? Hour 1. The dollar collapses. The moment American markets stop responding, global financial markets go into free fall. The dollar, which makes up 58% of all central bank reserves worldwide, suddenly becomes worthless paper. Think about what that means. China holds $760 billion in US Treasury bonds. Japan holds $1.1 trillion. Saudi Arabia, South Korea, India, every major economy on Earth has trillions of dollars in reserves that just became worthless. In 1 hour, the global financial system loses its foundation. Global stock markets would lose an estimated $30 to $50 trillion in value within hours. The 2008 financial crisis caused $15 trillion in losses. This would be 2 to 3x worse. 96% of trade in the Americas is invoiced in US dollars, all of it paralyzed. Hour 3. Oil stops flowing. Every barrel of oil in the world is priced in US dollars. With the dollar gone, no one knows what oil costs. Overnight, shipping companies stop sailing without knowing what currency to accept. Pipeline operators shut down systems. Within 72 hours, fuel shortages begin in every country on Earth. Hour 6. NATO collapses. The United States funds 70% of NATO's operational budget. Without America, NATO is a framework with no army behind it. Russia understands this immediately. Within hours of confirmation that America is gone, Russian military units begin moving toward the borders of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These countries have been in Russia's crosshairs for decades. Hour 12. The nuclear question. Here is the most terrifying part of this scenario. The United States holds 3,700 active nuclear warheads, 400 on land-based ICBMs, 970 on submarines, and 300 at bomber bases. If the US government collapses, who controls those submarines? Who has the launch codes? Those 14 nuclear submarines are somewhere in the Pacific and Atlantic right now, armed, submerged, undetected. With no president, no chain of command, no orders, the world's most powerful weapons system becomes an unknown variable. This alone would send every other nuclear nation to its highest alert level.
The world after America. The global economy enters a second dark age. Economists at Moody's Analytics have calculated that even a one-week US debt default, not a total collapse, just 1 week of missed payments, would cause the US economy to lose 6 million jobs and trigger a global recession. A complete and permanent collapse would be incomparably worse. The global supply chain is built entirely around the United States. China's factories produce 28% of the world's manufactured goods, almost all of it sold to or through American markets. If those markets disappear overnight, 750 million Chinese workers dependent on exports face unemployment. Germany, which exports $160 billion annually to the US, faces an economic crisis it has not seen since the 1930s. Mexico, where 80% of all exports go to the United States, loses its entire economy in days. Mexico, 80% of all exports go to the US, total economic collapse in days. Canada, about 75% of exports go to the US, immediately enters depression. China loses its largest export customer, 750 million manufacturing workers at risk. Germany, $160 billion a year in US exports, worst economic crisis since World War II. Saudi Arabia, oil priced in dollars, no dollar means no functioning oil market. China rises, but not the way you think. Everyone assumes China would immediately become the new superpower. The reality is more complicated. Yes, China is the world's second largest economy, but the Chinese yuan represents only 2.1% of global foreign exchange reserves compared to the dollar's 58%. The yuan is not freely exchangeable. China's capital markets are not open to the world. Instead, what experts at the Federal Reserve predict is a chaotic multipolar scramble. No single currency replaces the dollar. The euro, the yuan, gold, and possibly cryptocurrencies would all compete for dominance in a deeply unstable global financial system that has no foundation. It would take decades to stabilize. The military vacuum and global war. For 80 years, American military presence has been the single most powerful force preventing large-scale war between major powers. It's called the Pax Americana, the American peace. With it gone, every frozen conflict on Earth thaws simultaneously. Taiwan,
China has wanted reunification for 75 years. Without the U.S. 7th Fleet, invasion begins within days. Eastern Europe, Russia moves on Baltic states. No U.S. is no real NATO deterrent. Korean Peninsula, North Korea has 90 estimated nuclear warheads. South Korea is suddenly alone. South China Sea, 6 nations dispute these waters. U.S. Navy was the referee. Now there is no referee. Middle East, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel. Without U.S. military balance, a regional war becomes inevitable. The American Enterprise Institute's analysis states this plainly. Orders can die of murder, exhaustion, or suicide. Without America, the rules-based international order that has prevented great power war since 1945 simply ceases to exist. Impact on South Asia, Pakistan, and India. And what about this part of the world, specifically Pakistan and India? Both countries are nuclear powers. Pakistan has an estimated 170 nuclear warheads. India has approximately 172 warheads. Both are aimed at each other. The United States has historically been the diplomatic pressure valve that prevents a full-scale India-Pakistan nuclear conflict. Without American diplomatic pressure, without IMF and World Bank financial leverage, both nations lose a critical reason to restrain themselves. This is not speculation. In the 1999 Kargil crisis, when India and Pakistan came within hours of nuclear exchange, it was U.S. diplomatic intervention under President Clinton that pulled both countries back. Pakistan imports critical food staples and industrial components priced in dollars. Without the dollar system functioning, Pakistan's import capacity collapses within weeks. Economic reality of U.S. dollar dependency, IMF and World Bank data. For ordinary people in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and dozens of developing nations, a collapsed dollar means hyperinflation overnight. The currencies of these nations are already weak against the dollar. Remove the dollar entirely, and they have no anchor. Prices for imported food, medicine, and fuel would become unaffordable within days. So what does this enormous, uncomfortable hypothetical actually teach us? Lesson 1. Interdependence is not weakness, it is the entire system. The world is not a collection of independent countries that cooperate sometimes. It is a single, deeply integrated system, and that system was built around the United States. The dollar, the military umbrella, the open trade rules, remove any one of them and everything shakes. Remove all three and everything falls. Lesson 2. No country is ready to replace America, even China. The yuan has 2.1% of global reserves. The dollar has 58%. That gap represents decades of trust, open markets, legal institutions, and financial infrastructure that China simply has not built yet. A world without America would not pivot smoothly to China. It would descend into a chaotic scramble that hurts China badly too. Lesson 3. Iran destroying America is the wrong question entirely. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Its longest-range missiles cannot reach American soil. And even the real conflict happening right now, U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran in March 2026, shows us something more important. The actual danger is not one country destroying another. The danger is that a conflict between two countries can destabilize the entire world's food, fuel, and finance without a single missile landing on American soil. No corner of the global economy will be spared if the U.S. were to collapse and the crisis were not resolved quickly. Mark Zandi, Chief Economist, Moody's Analytics. America cannot be destroyed overnight by Iran or by anyone. That is a fact. But as we've seen today, the world doesn't need America to be destroyed to feel its absence. Every sanction, every military withdrawal, Every dollar that weakens, the world feels it immediately, everywhere. Final question for the audience. If the world is this dependent on one country, is that stability or is that the world's greatest single point of failure? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this made you think, subscribe, because next week we're asking, what if China's economy collapsed overnight? That one is even more terrifying.